Testing, testing. Can everybody at home hear me?
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Call the January 4th, 2021 Belvedere City Council meeting to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Arivalo. Arivalo is absent. Brereton.
Here.
Fleury.
Present.
Frank.
Present.
Freeman.
Here.
McGee. McGee.
Mike McGee, here.
Porter.
Here.
Ratcliffe.
Here.
Snow.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessings we receive each and every day. Help us to appreciate small kindnesses and beauty of the world that surrounds us. Our first significant snowfall this season has given us a pristine white blanket to admire. Let us realize that the circle of seasons affords us new opportunities and a fresh canvas upon which to write our community legacy. As our city council meets tonight, we invite the presence of your guiding hand as we conduct the city of Belvedere's business. Help us to readily find the pathway to honest and just decisions that serve the common good and to be listening ear to the voices of our citizens. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen. Under public comment this evening, we have 4 individuals that would like to speak, first of whom will be Alderman Freeman speaking from home. Alderman Freeman, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to first start off by saying that I wholeheartedly believe there isn't a single person currently serving on the City Council who is against the Ida Public Library or doesn't acknowledge its vital importance to our community and the residents it serves. So just to be clear, nobody is anti-library here. Having said that, as we begin our new budget year process, I think it's important that the constituents represented by this council and administration are well informed. Obviously, raising the city portion of the tax levy represents an increase in property taxes for the residents of the city of Belvedere. Not raising the levy for the city constitutes the city's budgeting levy from the previous year remains intact and unchanged. As operating costs increase, the administrators and department heads must find ways to trim the fat while also securing that items in their respective budgets all warrant needs rather than mere wants. Even as all of Boone County residents' taxes continue to rise due to levy increases year after year from the Belvedere Park District, Belvedere School District 100, the county, and climbing property assessments, only the city and library's levies are under the control of the council. While the city has refrained from raising its levy for the past 3 years, the library's levy has continued to grow as they show up in council chambers with their hand out every single year. Failing to find and execute creative ways to operate within their means, they instead threaten to cut programs and services our library provides its most vulnerable patrons if they don't get their way. As much as they continue to use the old building needs maintenance and the growing minimum wage as their arguments for perpetual increases, they have neither incorporated the use of more volunteers nor added revenue-generating services such as passport applications and others that have been suggested to them. They have also yet to adequately address their crumbling infrastructure, even with their continued raises in revenue. Our library has a long history of mismanagement of funds and poor decision-making. Although we should not hold the current board accountable for past mistakes made by previous boards, these practices have inevitably left the taxpayers on the hook for all former and current missteps without repair. Their annual audit report, flagging everything from accounting practices to investment choices, continues to mirror itself year after year with minimal change. It has also come to our attention and is irrefutably reflected in the current budget submitted by the library that the $18,000 levy increase would be used extensively to pad the current library director's salary. A director, I might add, that does not live in the city of Belvidere or even Boone County, and whose own taxes are unaffected by this levy increase. In this year of COVID-19, where unemployment has skyrocketed, a large portion of our citizens wait in food bank lines to feed their families, and many cannot pay their bills, it is my opinion, just as it was last year, that all taxpayer-funded payroll rates should be frozen unless mandated by the state or covered by a union contract, including library employees. It was my intention, by being one of the 4 aldermen, to call for a special meeting on December 28, 2020, to shed light on the decision to not increase the library levy for the new fiscal year by the 5 financially responsible aldermen, Alderman Brereton, Frank, Porter, McGee, and myself, Alderman Freeman, while Alderman Fleury, Arevalo, Ratcliffe, Stevens, and Snow all voted to increase the levy, thereby increasing taxes. The tie was then broken by Mayor Chamberlain, who cast his vote as a yes for the tax increase. The special meeting requested was due to a 10-minute period during the previous library levy discussion that had failed to be recorded or broadcast to the taxpayers. The special meeting began with the official record being read by the city clerk. Immediately following, Mayor Chamberlain unequivocally used his position to shut the meeting down, calling for adjournment without discussion or explanation in a well-orchestrated, pre-planned show of force in conjunction with the city attorney, a bullying tactic that was directly aimed at silencing concerned aldermen looking to set the record straight and calling the 2 of us who dared to speak up out of order. I work as a representative and voice for my constituents in Ward 5, who saw fit to elect me to a position of performing the duties of oversight, holding administrators accountable, and being fiscally responsible with their tax dollars. To silence my voice equally oppresses theirs. I am personally outraged by the mayor and city attorney's actions at the special meeting, and as taxpayers, you all should be too. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Alderman Brereton. You have the floor.
Thank you. Mine's along the same lines as well. So it needs to be made clear that last week's special meeting was called by 4 aldermen. Those 4 aldermen being Brereton, Frank, Freeman, and Porter. The meeting was not called by the mayor or the administration. So as soon as the meeting began, Mayor Chamberlain immediately took control, then sought for a motion to adjourn, shutting down any possible last chance of reducing the tax levy by the deadline. The purpose of the special meeting was to address the previous meeting's unaccounted for and undocumented events that transpired while the camera was conveniently turned off. This includes a 5-5 tie vote, which was broken by Mayor Chamberlain to increase the tax levy. An additional purpose for the meeting was to seek a possible reduction in the tax levy that could have only been done in this meeting alone. Mayor Chamberlain does not support any tax reductions, and that is why the meeting was ended immediately. The 4 aldermen were also better prepared for this meeting, having copies of the library's budget, which clearly shows an $18,000 pay increase for one individual. Not to mention that this same individual told us he was seeking this $18,000 pay increase when he had addressed the council previously. This is all documented on video. Elected officials were denied any discussion on this matter, therefore sticking us with the tax levy increase. In my opinion, this seems like criminal behavior. The fact that Attorney Drella seemed to deliberately mislead the council by stating that a motion to adjourn is non-debatable is reprehensible. Yes, the motion itself may be non-debatable, but we could have simply voted that motion down and continued with discussion, an option which he did not provide to any confused aldermen. And I'm assuming they were confused. Well, I'm assuming most of them were, because why else on earth would an alderman vote to not allow their fellow aldermen any discussion? This type of activity seems to be getting more and more common each day in many areas of Boone County government. Again, I hope the voters are paying attention.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Next up, we have Alderman Frank. Alderman Frank, you have the floor.
It was very upsetting last week to have our special meeting shut down when we requested one several days in advance, only to be told we could not speak. Did Attorney Drella give us the same consideration by telling us in advance? I believe we did have a right to speak, and we were misled because it would kill whatever chances we had. 2020 has been a very challenging year for Belvedere. We are dealing with unemployment, school not in session, back in session, hybrid learning. It is exhausting. The restaurant and the bar industry has suffered immensely with the governor's mitigations. Belvedere gave 35 businesses relief money in hopes of saving their livelihood. Right now, the talk is, have you received your stimulus check? People are struggling with their budget and to make ends meet. To add insult to this, we are fighting for one man to get an $18,000 pay increase. To be told it would go for programs, minimum wage increase, and to fix the crumbling stairway is a lie. Clearly, line item 50100 has been increased $18,000 with director's salary next to line item 50100. How can a library board who has no means to pay for such salary vote on giving one? Aren't we to be presented this 60 days in advance of passing the tax levy? Clearly, it cannot be only a few aldermen who are brave enough to ask the tough questions and to fight to reject the salary increase. I will not be bullied. This is wrong and unacceptable. This is not over. I still think it is possible to make this right.
Thank you. Mr. Morris, you have the floor.
Well, is this on?
There's a button on it. You have to hold it down.
Actually, it's gonna Brent's not sitting in the chair. If you want to slide more to your left, you could.
Now is this on? So I came here as a former alderman and as a taxpayer foremost. I was at the 1221 meeting regarding the $18,000 library levy increase. But I wasn't here for the 1228 special meeting. I did happen to catch some of that meeting in an audio. I wanted to comment on those two meetings. First of all, I want to thank the aldermen that did get it right regarding the levy increase. The amendment to raise the levy for the library of $18,000 The aldermen that got it right, I want to thank them. The questions that I had whenever I was here on the 21st that weren't asked, to me, were obvious questions. They weren't asked, they weren't answered. I'll ask them. Why wasn't the proper budget numbers reflected in the information given to the council? I understand that the budget showed, the only budget numbers showed that there was going to be a $18,000 increase for the director. That was in writing, as I understand it. There was nothing else in writing other than that. That's what you vote on. You know, I had said it before up here, and I'll say it again. In business, I trust my mother. Everybody else puts it in writing. That's the way you need to look at how you protect taxpayer dollars. Alderman Freeman, Alderman McGee, Alderman Brereton, Alderman Porter, and Alderman Franks got it right. They understand, and they proved it here tonight, what the public is feeling during this time in a crisis. They're certainly not getting $18,000 raises, which equate, by the way, to 30%. That's a 30% pay hike. Who in the world expects that taxpayer money ought to be given for that? I don't. I've been a taxpayer in this community for 43 years. And I don't think the rest of the taxpayers do either. And why didn't this governing body, particularly the mayor, insist that the $18,000 increase information be accurate long before this being placed on the agenda, and the only paperwork turned out to be a riddle that the Park District here pointed out that they were only gonna provide a portion of that for an $18,000. Trust me on that. That's not how you do business. The library board members, when asked, wanted you to approve the figures of the $18,000 director increase as originally, and as far as I understand, the only presentation that you had in your budget from them. Later, they simply asked you to trust them that they were only going to be using a portion of that, but the rest of that was going to go towards, it will be spent. It will be spent. Trust us. If you give it to us, we'll spend it. That is the problem with government. That's it. If you give them money, of course they're going to spend it. You guys are the caretakers of the taxpayer dollars that you give them. If they can't prove in writing what they're going to use that for, why in the world would you give it to them? Why? You shouldn't. The library also claimed that they were waiting to evaluate the director. They were going to do this at a different time. Why wasn't the director simply evaluated before? Why didn't they do an evaluation and be forthright and tell you what they're going to give the director for a raise? Instead, they told you, you trust us. You give us the money, and we'll evaluate him later, and then we'll tell you how much money we're going to give him for a raise. That's not good business. That's not looking out for the taxpayer's wallet. I don't think anybody treats their own personal finances like that. Anybody in this room, they don't do that. You don't do that because you can't afford to. This should have been rejected simply based on the budget presented in writing shows that the director is going to get a raise increase from $54,000 to $72,000. As I said, it equates to a 30% pay hike. And it's no wonder why taxpayers don't trust elected officials. You guys Some of you guys don't get it. You don't understand that this isn't your money. You don't spend your own money like that, and you shouldn't spend taxpayers' money like that. I would never fall for anything like that, and neither should you. They also claimed that if they didn't have the $18,000 tax levy increase, that they couldn't maintain paying employees the minimum age law. They couldn't maintain the number of employees who would have a minimum age law to contend with. Well, guess what? Welcome to the real world, folks, because every private business and every homeowner, they deal with that every month. They deal with it all the time. They don't have the luxury of somebody opening up a blank checkbook and writing a check to cover expenses that you can't even justify. And the best thing obviously would have been to be transparent with the council. The mayor should have been transparent with the council. He should have ensured that that line item, that figure, wasn't just a mystery, it wasn't a riddle. He should have made sure that you guys knew how much of that was going to go towards X, Y, Z, and what it was going to be used for. One alderman commented that he was doing the library board increase for the children. He treated it as if it's charity. Well, it's not charity. I hate to tell you, charity is when you open up your own wallet and you give your own money. Charity isn't when you open up taxpayers' wallet and give them money that you can't substantiate what you're doing with it. That's not charity. I'm all for charity. If Alderman Arivalo, who made that comment, would have wrote a check, how much, I probably would match it. But that's charity. This is taxpayer dollars. This is business. Alderman Snow commented also that it's only $18,000, only a dollar per resident. You know, it's only $1. Well, can you imagine how many tax raises have been done under that philosophy? You can raise it. It's only $1 per resident. We'll raise it. They can afford it. They can afford it. And look at the billions of dollars we're in the hole in the state of Illinois currently because of that sort of philosophy and failure to represent the taxpayer's wallet. That's what it amounts to. Totally out of touch and totally unresponsive to what the taxpayers expect you to do to watch out with their funds. Unexcusable. It's unexcusable. Now, as far as the 1228 meeting goes, the mayor chairs the meeting. I think we're all in agreement with that. I've sat under two other mayors, two different administrations, and the mayor chairs the meeting, and I respect that. But there's no code to prevent a mayor from holding discussion if aldermen choose to have discussion. The aldermen, the council, are the ones that vote, decide what they're going to discuss. The mayor should welcome discussion. He should want to hear what they have to say. You never know. You might learn something. You just might. The fact that you say that you couldn't quote the code, you just said there's a code that prevents me from going any further. You're the guy, the mayor is the person who holds the gavel. The mayor is the person that allows discussion. And he should allow discussion whenever an alderman or alderwomen want to speak. Why not? Of course. That would be the right thing to do. So what I gathered out of the meeting is that, as I said, Alderman Brereton, Alderman Franks, Alderman Porter, McGee, and Alderman Freeman, they had it right at the 12/28 meeting. They should be offended. I'm offended. I've never sat through anything like that, and I've been up in here for 12 years at one time or another. The mayor needs to start treating the council and the taxpayers as partners. And he shouldn't treat them as an inconvenience, because the council is not an inconvenience, and they should be allowed to participate in every issue and be heard in every issue that faces us, the taxpayer. Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our public comment for the evening. Under number 4, approval of minutes. I need approval for A, approval of minutes of the regular meeting of the Belvedere City Council of December 21, 2020 is presented. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Porter. I need a second. Second by Fleury. Questions, comments, or proposed amendments to the minutes as presented?
Snow has, would ask for an amendment.
Okay.
On page 4, at the top of the page, it's referencing E, ordinance 515H. And if we could add, this says an ordinance amending section 14152 of the City of Belvedere Municipal Code. And if anybody out there can readily tell me what that was, I'd appreciate it. I know what it is, and that's what I'm going to ask for. It was to change the number of gaming machine locations from 30 to 40. If we could put that in parentheses behind that statement, I would greatly appreciate it.
Consider it done.
Thank you.
Any
That's all I
other
had.
comments or amendments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes will, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Brereton,
No.
Fleury,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Ratcliffe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
8 in favor.
Minutes are approved, which brings us to item B, which is approval of the minutes of the special meeting of the Belvedere City Council of December 28th, 2020 is presented. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Snow will make that motion.
Motion by Snow. May I have a second, please? Second by Fleury. Questions, comments, proposed amendments to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval will, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Fleury,
Aye.
Frank,
No.
Freeman,
Nay.
McGee,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Ratcliffe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Brereton,
No.
6 in favor.
Motion is approved. Moving on, public hearing, we have none. Under special messages and proclamations, there are none this evening. As likewise, under number 7, there are no expenditures to approve this evening, which brings us to number 8, committee reports and minutes of city officers. Under A, we have minutes of Committee of the Whole, Public Safety, Finance, and Personnel of December 28th, 2020 is presented. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Fleury, second by Porter. Questions, comments, or proposed amendments to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval will, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Frank,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Ratcliffe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Brereton,
Aye.
Flurry,
Aye.
9 in favor.
Motion is approved unanimously. Under number 9, unfinished business, first up, we have ordinance 516H. This is a second reading. It's an ordinance granting a special use to allow indoor commercial entertainment, video gaming, within the Central Business District at 120 Buchanan Street. I will entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Frank.
Snow will make that motion.
I have a motion by Frank. Snow has the second. Additional questions or comments concerning the motion now on the floor? Hearing none, all those.
I do have a question. It's somewhat related. Obviously, this will allow video gaming at this location. And so at this point, have we had anybody fill or request those other 10 video gaming slots that we created last week or 2 weeks ago?
Madam Secretary?
We have not sold any stickers yet, but there is several people in the process getting ready.
Gina?
Yeah, I have received 2 special use applications and have been in daily communication with several other businesses that come on meeting as well.
Okay. Does that satisfy your question, sir?
Sure.
Okay. All those in favor of approval, the motion now on the floor, will, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Ratcliffe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Brereton,
Aye.
Flurry,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
9 in favor.
Motion is approved unanimously, which brings us to item B, ordinance 517H, which is also a second reading. An ordinance authorizing the transfer of abandoned properties to the Northern Illinois Land Bank Authority. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion, Your
Motion
Honor.
by Alderman Stevens, second by Alderman Fleury. Questions, comments, or further discussion concerning the motion now on the floor?
I have a question.
Please proceed, Alderman Freeman.
So, this isn't for myself, but I believe we have a large audience tonight. And for the people at home, if somebody could maybe explain what the Northern Illinois Land Bank Authority is and what they do, that would be great.
Attorney Drella?
As you recall, the Northern Land Bank Authority was an intergovernmental agency created by the city of Belvedere along with several other municipalities, who in turn also contracted with the Region 1 Planning Commission to administer this land bank. And the concept is you take properties that are abandoned, an eyesore in the communities, that are tax delinquent. You use a court action to clear up the back taxes, get title of the properties, and then you turn around and you resell them. Illinois has been using land banks for quite a while. The concept is you have one central clearinghouse where they get tired of the properties, they market them, they turn around and sell them, and that seeds money back into their bank, so to speak, to go out and acquire other properties that might be an eyesore or dilapidated. In these 3 cases, the land bank paid for the attorneys that handled these 3 cases. Unfortunately, the title goes to the city of Belvedere, so by contract with the land bank, we then transfer the properties to them. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Then the land bank fixes them up and resells them to prospective homeowners.
That is correct. And it actually, it's not just homeowners, it could be commercial properties as well.
Thank you.
Alderman Snow would have a statement.
Okay, go ahead.
So this particular ordinance allows for the transfer of 407 Allen Street, 1000 Nettie, and 1031 Garfield. Is that correct?
That is partially correct. I also drafted the ordinance such that any property that's acquired by Land Bank but titled in our name can be transferred to Land Bank immediately rather than have to wait the entire process of going through City Council. So it not only does it for these three, but for any future property that's acquired by the Land Bank in our name.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
And just to clarify, for the people at home, this helps alleviate abandoned, rundown properties so that they don't become nuisances and they are actually turned into viable real estate and we can collect taxes on them.
That is correct.
Alderman Frank?
When will we get other ones next year? We have 3 that we just did. When will we get some more?
We actually have 4 that we did. We initially submitted 4 or 5 to the Land Bank for consideration. They chose the 3 that you're talking about tonight. There was another one on Madison Street that they did not take as a possible abandoned property. I looked at it. It obviously was. I took that one to court on behalf of the city. So now we have title of that one. That's not part of this group. And that is, I believe that one was torn down, wasn't Brent? The council authorized the demolition of that property using grant funds. So that's the 4 of them that we've done this year. I don't know if we have any weight in the wings. I don't think so. But to be eligible, it has to be tax delinquent for 2 years. There has to be a structural problem with a building on the property. And typically you also want to show that there's been no water usage or water bills are unpaid, things like that. So it does take a little research.
Snow has a question.
Please proceed.
Go ahead, Dan.
So since Mr. Drella did mention the house on West Madison, what is our intent with that property, or is that going to go to Habitat?
That is something that the mayor and the council have to discuss at a future committee meeting.
Thank
That would
you.
be one of the directions that we would put out there to discuss. Would be a Habitat house if they're going to do one next year. Alderman Porter?
Yeah, I just had one question here. So aside from all the obvious benefits of it, of getting rid of the blighted property, my understanding is that the city does not benefit from any of the profits of this sale. So we transfer it to land bank and say the property value shoots way up. We don't get any of that profit from that sale, right? It all goes to the land bank.
If there is a profit, the direct profit and proceeds from the sale do go to land bank to reseed future efforts around the region. We get a huge indirect expense, or not expense, but indirect benefit. That being one, once it's resold, it's then on the tax rolls. So it's earning tax dollars, where it wasn't before because nobody's paying the taxes on it. They're just going delinquent. The second obvious benefit is on some of these properties, Public Works is having to go out and mow the grass and things like that because there's nobody, one option, obviously one of the criteria is it's abandoned. There's nobody there taking care of it. So Public Works and turn around, lean the property and all that kind of rigmarole. So it saves us that effort as well. And the third indirect benefit, of course, is the people living there because now instead of having an eyesore, you have something hopefully taken care of.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the motion now on the floor, will you, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
McGee? McGee?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Ratcliffe?
Aye.
Snow?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
Brereton?
No.
Flurry?
Aye.
Frank?
Aye.
Freeman?
Aye.
8 in favor.
The motion is approved, which brings us to item C, ordinance 518H, a second reading. An ordinance temporarily abating abandonment of liquor licenses and video gaming licenses within the city of Belvedere. May I have a motion to approve? Motion by Alderman Frank, second by Alderman Porter. Questions, comments, or further discussion concerning the motion now on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval will, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Porter,
Aye.
Ratcliffe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Brereton,
Aye.
Flurry,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
9 in favor.
Motion is approved unanimously, which brings us to number 10, new business. There is none this evening, which is followed by motions forwarded to Committee of the Whole, Public Safety and Finance and Personnel of December 28, 2020. Motions of Public Safety, Chairman Rick Brereton. Chairman Brereton, you have the floor.
Thank you. A, motion to accept the donation from the Women of the Moose of Belvedere Chapter Number 1052 in the amount of $100 for the Feed the Need food drive.
Motion out of committee. Questions, comments, or further discussion concerning the motion on the floor?
I have a question.
Please proceed.
So just to be clear, this is going to the police department to further help them with the Feed the Need drive that they do, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Alderman Freeman. We then either provide cash to the food bank or the churches, or we go and buy food and then give that food to the same.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments concerning the motion now on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor will, when your name is called, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Ratcliffe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Brereton,
Aye.
Flurry,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
9 in favor.
Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And at this time, I will exercise the right that I have to make a comment or two. I appreciate whenever folks come for public comment. We heard from 4 different individuals, and I want to be very clear about something. I did indeed break the tie on the vote. Whenever there is a tie, which means the council is deadlocked 5-5, I'm required to vote to break the tie. At the time I made the statement, and I will reiterate it, there were some murky areas about whether or not we even have the ability to approve or disapprove the levy requested by the library. In non-home rule communities, we do not. In home rule, there is not case law that says that we do. I understand that some took offense about the budget as it was expressed. It was not the clearest budget in the world, and we did not get a copy of that until we requested it also to present. So to rectify that, in the second meeting, we had 5 members of their board here who all testified to what their intent was really. I just feel that, and I would agree to some extent, that any burden on a taxpayer is a burden on the taxpayer. I will also point out that we have had a balanced budget every year since 2013. We have more in our reserve fund than is required by our ordinance. We think very carefully about what we ask for, and we decided, administration decided, not to ask for an increase in our levy this year because of the things that were mentioned by the alderman that spoke. For those reasons, I stand by the decision I made. I did not go with the representatives of that half of the council. That does not mean that they're right or they're wrong. I was asked to make a choice, and I made a choice based on the evidence presented and on the testimony that we heard in 2 successive meetings. And I want to clarify that for folks who maybe did not see those meetings. Everything that I ever vote on, and I seldom vote on anything except to break a tie, is all on video or recorded. This particular meeting, somebody tripped over the cord back there and was unplugged. The official record of any meeting are the notes of the city clerk. And so the request for a special meeting, yes, I could have called a special meeting. I didn't see a reason for it, because we have the official record. So Alderman Brereton and his 3 fellow aldermen, it took at least 3 of them, to request the meeting. We scheduled the meeting. I had the clerk read the minutes because my understanding was they wanted it on film so it could go on our YouTube channel and then on Channel 20, that I broke the tie to tax the taxpayers an additional amount. So once we accomplished that, that was the aim and the goal of the meeting, and I asked for a motion to adjourn. The motion was offered. A couple of people started acting inappropriate, and I did gavel them. Then past that point, I had the second, and I believe the vote went 6-3. Just like the vote to approve the levy after it was amended went 8-2 the week before. So I think it's important that we don't start listening to just one side in commentary, and that concerned citizens should listen to the entire meeting and all that was said and all the testimony that was done and all of the behaviors that were exhibited in the room, those 3 or 4 meetings that dealt with the levy and the library. Thank you. That's all I have tonight. Yes, Alderman Burt.
Thank you. The other point of that meeting was, though, that we could possibly reconsider or make an amendment to the levy. We were denied that.
That would not be legally possible and turn the levy in on time.
Okay, but we were not even allowed discussion about that.
There was no need because there was nothing that could have been done at that point in time as was verified by our legal counsel.
Okay, I'm not going to argue.
Well, read the rules. You can argue
Okay.
all you want, and
You can
that's
have
fair,
discussion.
but the rules are the rules.
Okay, well, you shut everybody down before we had any discussion at all.
There
It's
is
on
no
video.
discussion after a motion to adjourn. Yes, Alderman Frank.
I would like to say, I think you're missing the point. I know we have a balanced budget. The whole point of our argument is this one person is getting the whole $18,000 raise.
No, we were
You're
assured-
okay with that?
No, I'm not, and I was assured by their board that that's not indeed what the intention was.
It's in our budget book already.
I was assured by their board that it was expressed probably improperly, but that was not their intent. And I am not going to call their 5 board members liars when they stand here and testify. I'm sorry. They practically had a board meeting right in here to explain to you that that was not their intent, and they went on to explain what their intent was. And then there was discussion about taking money from the city to fix their steps, and the problem, that kind of goes against what the whole thing was. And the amount of their levy wouldn't be enough to fix those steps anyway. That they have to tear all those out. That's a very expensive project. So again, I don't make spur of the moment decisions about anything. I listen to all of the testimony, and when it's called upon me to break a tie, I break a tie with the evidence that's been presented and what the goal of whatever the vote was is and how it affects the majority of people in our community. Do I make mistakes? Of course I do. But it is my duty to make that decision. Yes, Alderman
Well,
Frank.
the other thing is, how do you take from one line item and put it somewhere else?
You do that all the time.
Well, you move it from capital to where, but you don't move it from a line item that goes to a director's salary to somewhere else.
Yeah, you do. You can, the budget is a proposal of spending money for the year, okay? Which is why, because of COVID and the difficult times that we're having, this council and the administration agreed to any purchase over $25,000 would be re-examined by the council before we made those expenditures, even though it was approved in the budget. And we have held true to that every time. So I don't do their budget. I don't do their audit. They have their own board. They have their own tax increment. I would like to see us totally separated from the library so that we don't have any responsibility for what they do with their levy, and I'm looking into that. I don't know how we got in this. This was the way that it's been since I've been an alderman, that the library levy came through the city. And so I would like to see if we can maybe change that, and we would prevent having to have this discussion every year. I sat on the committee for the library expansion for 3 years. And there were a number of recommendations made to provide profit centers for the library, like a FedEx Kinko's, like computer repair, different things that would be a generator of income for the library. As it turned out, there was no way this community was going to be able to raise the money for their plan for the library. And we have had some issues for a number of years because instead of hiring a real director, they promoted from within, and the folks that they promoted a couple of times were not up to the task. So they went out and hired a new director. We don't have any say-so about doing that. Alderman Snow, better than anybody else on the council, could probably share that with us because he goes to most of their meetings. So, you know, I would like to see the relationship change. I don't think there was any intent to deceive. That's why I asked their board to come to council meeting to testify about that particular item. So, and I did not see that budget or saw that this was coming up at all until we started to discuss it in council, because I don't audit their budget. So, yes, sir.
I just think I'd like to hear, maybe it might be appropriate this time for Attorney Drell to maybe go into a little more detail on what exactly happens if you do miss the deadline for turning in the levy, and what the procedure is, legal ramifications and that type of thing.
There's very little case law about, let me phrase that. The only cases I did find is if you don't file your levy as required by the state statute, you don't have a levy for the following year. Not just the increase, there's no levy for the following year. The cases that were out there were cases that, there were some cases where the municipality inadvertently filed their budget instead of the levy and was challenged. And the court held that no, they don't have a levy then. You can't file your budget. This was back in the days when they were filed at about the same time. I spoke with Alderman Porter, I think about a week ago on the phone. He had called me with some requests for some clarification. As I encourage all of you to do, obviously individually, to avoid Open Meetings Act violations. But currently you do your budget in June, or actually in May. We do the levy in the middle of the winter. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the way the state statutes got set up. At one point, they were closer in time together for certain municipalities and units of government. And at that point, a municipality filed their budget instead of the levy. Don't ask me why. And they had no levy for the following year. There's other case laws very clear. Strict adherence to the levy statutes must be followed by the municipality to obtain a levy for the following year. So if you did not file that levy on that Tuesday, or before that Tuesday, I should say, there's a decent likelihood that somebody could challenge the levy if you did file it late, even if they took it late, and then you'd have no property taxes for the following year, which would have put the city obviously in a world of hurt. We're not talking about, no increases. We're talking about not having enough money to operate the city without invading reserves. And I have no idea if there'd be enough reserves there to cover your operating costs for that year without that levy. So, and backtracking that one more moment, if there had been a motion to reconsider, either at that special meeting or even before that, by your own ordinance, a motion to reconsider, if that passes, remember, it takes 2 votes on a motion to reconsider. One is the decision by the council to actually reconsider the original vote. That's the first vote. If that vote passes, the underlying motion, this case was Ordinance 511H or something like that, that then has to kick over the next council meeting. So the minute you bring a motion to reconsider, if that passes, if that had passed on Monday, you'd have no levy because you wouldn't have had time to pass the ordinance in time to file it.
What about them presenting us the tax levy for the library earlier, like 60 days, like the code says?
You have a couple problems with that. First of all, the levy requirement, they have to wait just like Ms. Tobin does for the EEV estimates from the county. prepare the levy. And we don't get those until a week or two before, or sometimes a month before, not even a month, before the levy is presented to you. Budgets have to be presented early, but keep in mind the budget ordinance is independent of the levy ordinance. While they should have something to do with each other, under statute, they really don't.
What about, when we do budgets, I think when we have to pass it in June or whatever, then sometimes we can make a tax amendment or like a budget amendment. Can we do the same thing for a tax levy, make an amendment, even though we filed it?
Once the levy is filed, it's filed. I'm not aware of any case law allowing an amendment to it. Obviously, it would be improper to have a levy to increase it. I'd have to research about a levy to decrease it. I'm not aware of that even being a possibility, because once it's filed, and they're going to spread it of record and assess it. But obviously, they cannot increase it. I mean, that's like not filing your levy.
Ms. Tobin?
I have a question.
Could you wait just a minute? Marcia, Becky wanted to make a comment, and then you have the floor.
So part of it is by the time our budget is approved, most people, you've already received your tax bill. Everything goes in a sequence. If you've never participated in the Taxes on Time committee that has been put together by the treasurer and the assessor's office, I highly suggest you do so, because it really lays out the timeline and how everybody's involved in the process, from the time something goes to the assessor, by the time it goes to the treasurer or to the county clerk, to the treasurer, back to your taxing bodies. It's a very beneficial process, and it helps you understand the timeline. So I strongly encourage you to attend those.
Alderman Freeman, you have the floor.
So I think this is for Attorney Drella. So 75 ILCS 54-10 from Chapter 81, Paragraph 4 through 10, Section 4 through 10. The Board of Trustees of a municipal library shall also submit to the City Council, Board of Trustees, or Board of Town Trustees, along with the Illinois State Library, a statement of financial requirements of the library for the ensuing fiscal year for inclusion in the appropriation of the corporate authority and of the amount of money which, in the judgment of the Board of Library Trustees, will be necessary to levy for library purposes in the next annual tax levy ordinance. This statement shall be submitted no less than 60 days prior to when the tax levy must be certified under subsection B of Section 18-15 of the Property Tax Code. So why are we always getting this stuff at the last minute, and then we have 2 meetings, and then it has to pass, otherwise we won't have a levy? This clearly says that the library should be submitting their levy request at least 60 days prior to our meetings.
Think of that in terms of the estimated levy that the council is required to adopt. I want to say it's about a month before we do our levy. And I don't know if you guys got that or not. But the actual levy request, you're not going to get until closer to the actual levy, because we don't get that information from the county in time, and neither does the library.
And if I could, their budget process is the same as ours. So I'm not really sure how they could provide us their budget 60 days before our levy's out, when we've barely started our budget process yet, and our fiscal years run the same.
Actually, no, their budget's already adopted.
I think this just mainly pertains to their tax levy requests, so that we have time to ask them for their proposed budget and have extensive discussions about it, rather than it all has to be done in 2 meetings, one of which this year got unplugged. So they need to be knowing what their levy request is going to be 60 days prior to when that has to be filed. And that would give us ample time to request their proposed budget and have comprehensive discussions about what their new levy request is and whether or not we should pass it. I think that's what the 60-day requirement is for.
Ms. Tobin?
If I could, their levy number, that comes from me. They don't do the equation, they don't do the formula, I do that. So that $18,301, that's my number that I give to them. Then they go back to their board and determine if that number will coincide with their budget and that'll work, or if they would come back to you and ask for a different number, whether that's more or less. But I am the one that does the figures for them, based on how I do the formula for our levy. So it's the same.
And that's because they don't have anybody that can do that. And so we're their big sister, if you will, that we've done that. But it still depends on the county. And we do everything just as quickly as we possibly can, but there's information that we have to have before we can move forward. And I would point this out. Last year, was it last year that we almost didn't get our levy done? We had to have a special meeting. And I find it curious that once that's happened, and that was brought out in conversation, that once again we'd get pushed right up to a deadline about the budget and the levy getting approved. Perhaps we need to change our process also, because we can't operate without a budget. That's ridiculous. And our budgets are balanced and we don't exceed them. So the process has worked, and it's worked for a long period of time. We have tweaked it as we've gone along and listened to the council on how they wanted to make changes and gone along with what the council requested. So anybody else?
Alderman Freeman, could you read me that statute that you're referring to again? What section was it?
It's 75 ILCS 5/4-10 from Chapter 81, paragraph 4 through 10, sections 4 through 10.
Thank you. And I'd also like to remind you again, this is the one that really kind of kicks us in the teeth a little bit, is that Section 5 of Article 3, which specifically states that a city government or a village government is required to levy the amount submitted by the library board of trustees. We don't get a choice in not levying that by that statute. And if, as you recall, the way I drafted the ordinance, because the motion that came out of committee was not to do that, was an attempt to use our home rule powers to circumvent that statute. And as I indicated, and Alderman Brereton pointed out in the discussion, that while that's the way we did it, and that's the only way we possibly could do it, there's absolutely no case law out there that would support us doing that. So if there was litigation, it would be novel litigation in the state of Illinois.
Well, what I would recommend is that we have a more thorough discussion when we get this place next year, and early in the year, about how we can possibly separate us from the responsibility of having to calculate their levy. If they have a full-time director now, they need to start assuming some of that responsibility. But part of that problem has always been that their finances have not allowed for it. When you look at the amount of programming that they do over the course of a year, it's phenomenal. They have stuff all year long for kids, particularly in the summer. And I've never sat down and broken down their budget. That's not my responsibility, and I had to trust that their board was doing it. We've replaced several people on their board over the past couple of years with people we felt would be more responsible about reporting to the city and sharing information with the city. Excuse me. And I think that has happened, but we will undertake a better discussion to look at how we might change this whole thing, because I don't want to get tied up with this every year about the library's budget, the library's levy. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion by Alderman Stevens. May I have a second, please? Second by Alderman Fleury. Questions, comments, or further discussion? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are now adjourned. Yes, sir.
If I may bother you to sign these. You signed them
Get
once.
Clint to sign. He's gonna- or Mr. Burton.